let's be honest. Thinking about getting a new HVAC system, it can bring on a wave of stress, can't
Oh,
it?
absolutely. It's a big investment, yeah.
And the whole installation process, for many of us, it just feels like this mysterious event happening in our house.
That's right. It's definitely not like, swapping out a light bulb. You're dealing with complex machinery, electrical stuff, refrigerant, a whole system.
Needs to be integrated properly.
Exactly.
Well, today we're going to try and demystify that a bit, specifically focusing on what you can expect when Hartzell's Heat and Air comes to install a new HVAC system.
Right. And we've gathered a bunch of info for this Hartzell's own professional checklist, which is really detailed.
Yeah, I saw that. Plus customer reviews, some general advice from HVAC pros on what to ask.
General process overviews, common problems people run into, and even the latest on energy efficiency standards.
So our goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is to give you a clearer roadmap of a Hartzell's installation.
Yeah, hopefully highlight the different stages, maybe give a sense of the timeline, point out the critical details you should be aware of.
By the end, you should feel much more clued in, more confident about what's happening.
That's the plan.
Okay, so let's get started right at the beginning. What happens before the installation crew even shows up at your door?
Okay, so like any really professional outfit,
Mm-hmm.
Hartzell's is likely going to conduct a pretty thorough inspection first. An evaluation of your current setup, the installation site.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for any potential hiccups,
Mm-hmm.
or special requirements for your house.
Like what kind of things?
Well, maybe obstacles for the outdoor unit, like bushes too close, or if the ground isn't level. Or maybe tricky ductwork access inside. It's like their pre-game analysis.
Makes sense. And what about the homeowner? What can you do to get ready for this? Sounds like a little prep could help things go smoother.
Exactly. Yeah, while their checklist focuses on their actions, it's always good practice to make sure kids and pets are safely out of the way,
Yeah.
where the work's going to be happening.
Right. Keep them clear of the area.
And also, if you've got anything fragile or valuable nearby, maybe near the furnace or where the outdoor unit goes, probably best to move it somewhere safe beforehand, just in case.
Good tip. Okay, makes perfect sense. Now, installation day itself, the main event. What are those first things you can expect? What happens right when they arrive?
Well, you should expect the Hartzell's team to introduce themselves,
Oh.
basic professionalism, right? But it sets the stage for clear communication.
Okay, so they introduce themselves and do they just jump right in and start tearing things apart?
No, not usually. A really crucial next step, and something Hartzell's seems to emphasize with their focus on cleanliness, is protecting your home.
Ah, the drop cloths.
Exactly. They should be laying down drop cloths in the work areas, hallways they'll be using.
Huh?
Basically shielding your floors and furniture from
Yeah.
dust and, well, footprints.
That's a detail I always appreciate. It shows respect for your space, doesn't it?
It really does. It minimizes the mess and disruption, prevents scuffs, makes the whole thing feel less intrusive for you.
Agreed. So, floor's protected. What's next?
Then the team will usually bring in their tools, get their equipment set up, kind of organize their workspace.
Okay.
And the lead installer, they might take a few minutes just to quickly walk you through the plan again. We're going to start here, then move here, just so everyone's aligned.
Good communication.
And critically, they'll enact safety procedures right away. That means shutting off the electrical supply at the breaker panel and turning off the gas service valve to the existing furnace or boiler if you have gas.
Right. Non-negotiable first step. Safety first.
Absolutely.
Okay, safety handled. Now comes the removal of the old system. Let's start outside with the existing AC unit.
Okay, yeah. So this is where some important environmental rules kick in. Hartz's technicians, they have to be certified for this. They'll use a special recovery machine to safely remove the refrigerant from your old AC.
That's the EPA mandated thing, right?
Spot on. You can't just vent that stuff into the air. It's illegal and bad for the environment. So them doing this properly shows they're following the rules.
Good to know. So refrigerant recovered.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then they'll disconnect the old electrical wiring, but only after making absolutely certain the circuit breaker is off and the disconnect switch right by the unit is off.
What if there isn't one of those disconnect switches?
Good question. If your old setup doesn't have one, they'll likely install a new one there. It's required by code now for safety. Then finally, they'll physically lift out and remove the old outdoor unit.
Okay. And what about prepping that spot for the new condenser? Does it just slot right in?
Not always. The ground might need leveling.
Yeah.
Or the new unit might be a slightly different size or shape. So often they'll need to level the area, maybe put in a new prefabricated pad like a sturdy plastic or concrete base.
Ah, for stability.
Exactly. And also, check for clearance. Trim back any overgrown bushes, maybe even small tree branches, that might block airflow to the new unit. Airflow is key.
Right. Okay, moving inside. Taking out the old evaporator coil. Where is that usually again?
Typically, it's either right above or right below your furnace inside the ductwork system.
Gotcha.
So getting to it means they have to carefully remove the sheet metal box around it, called the plenum. Usually straightforward, but,
What?
well, if that coil is tucked away in a really tight closet or maybe a cramped attic space or behind finished walls in a basement, it just makes the removal a bit more complex. Might take some extra time and care.
Okay. And those copper lines connecting the inside and outside units? The refrigerant lines, do they reuse those? Seems like it might save time.
Ideally, no. Best practice, and what most reputable pros like Hertzels would likely recommend, is to replace the whole line set.
Why is it so important?
It's mostly about the type of refrigerant oil. Older systems use mineral oil, but newer, high-efficiency systems use synthetic POE oil. They don't mix well.
Ah, contamination risk.
Exactly. Using the old lines, even if flushed, can potentially contaminate the new system, hurting its efficiency and maybe even shortening its lifespan. So new lines are usually the way to go.
But what if it's like impossible to run new lines? Say they're buried in concrete or something.
Right. In rare cases where replacement is truly impractical, then technicians might attempt to thoroughly flush the old lines with a special solvent and then do rigorous pressure tests to make absolutely sure they're clean and leak-free. But replacement is definitely preferred.
Okay, good to understand the reasoning. All right, old system's out. Time for the new gear. Let's talk installing the new indoor evaporator coil first.
Okay. With a new coil, you might hear terms like cased or uncased.
What's the difference?
A cased coil basically comes pre-installed in its own metal cabinet. Makes installation generally a bit quicker, cleaner, more self-contained. An uncased coil is just the coil itself, and the technicians build a housing around it.
Does one perform better?
Performance-wise and in terms of lifespan, they should be pretty much the same if they're both installed correctly according to the manufacturer's specs. The case coil might just mean a slightly neater, faster install process for the techs.
Got it. And assuming they are replacing the copper line set, what's involved there?
So the new line set, again, has two lines, the larger insulated suction line and the smaller liquid line. They'll carefully run these between the indoor and outdoor units, trying to use the most direct route with minimal sharp bends, because bends can restrict refrigerant flow.
I may secure them.
Oh yeah, they need to be properly secured along the way to prevent rattling or damage. And a really critical component they install in the liquid line, usually near the outdoor unit, is a filter dryer.
Filter dryer. What does that do?
Think of it like a little insurance policy for the system. It catches any tiny bits of debris and, more importantly, absorbs any residual moisture that might be in the lines.
Why is moisture bad?
Moisture mixing with refrigerant can create acids, which can corrode internal parts and really mess up the system's efficiency and longevity. So the filter dryer is crucial.
Okay. And after the lines and dryer are in,
They'll connect everything up and then perform vacuum tests. They use a vacuum pump to pull out all the air and any remaining moisture from the lines down to a very deep vacuum level measured in microns. Then they watch to see if the vacuum holds, proving there are no leaks.
like checking a tire for leaks before you inflate it.
Exactly that kind of principle. It's vital for a sealed system,
All right. Now for the big box outside, setting the new air conditioner unit.
right? So the new outdoor unit, the condenser, gets carefully uncrated. They'll give it a good look over to check for any shipping damage, dents, bent fins, that kind of thing. Once it passes inspection, they'll carefully lift it and place it securely onto that leveled pad we talked about earlier. Then comes connecting the refrigerant lines.
How do they connect those securely?
They use a process called brazing. It's similar to soldering, but uses a much higher temperature and a filler metal, usually a silver alloy, to create a super strong leak-proof bond between the copper lines and the service valves on the AC unit. This needs to be done skillfully to avoid leaks.
Okay. Electrical work. Definitely not a DIY job. What kind of electrical upgrades might be needed?
It really depends on your existing setup and current codes. Often, a new service disconnect box that switches right next to the outdoor unit needs to be installed or replaced.
Right.
And Hartzell's checklist specifically mentions this, ensuring the wiring size is correct. They check the unit's data plate for something called MCA, minimum circuit amps, and MOCP, maximum overcurrent protection. The wire size and the breaker size have to match these specs and local codes.
Why is that so critical?
Using the wrong size wire or breaker is a major safety hazard. Undersized wires can overheat and cause fires. Incorrect breakers might not trip when they should or trip nuisancely. So getting this right is absolutely vital for safety and proper operation. Both the breaker outside and the disconnect and the one inside your main panel need to be correctly sized.
Makes sense. Okay, what about that little drain line, the condensate drain? Seems minor, but you mentioned Hartzell's checklist goes into detail.
It's incredibly important. That little line carries away all the water your AC pulls out of the air. If it gets blocked or isn't installed right, you can end up with serious water damage.
Yikes. So what does Hartzell's checklist say about it?
It's quite specific, which is a good sign. They emphasize correct slope it needs to pitch downwards at least a quarter inch for every foot it runs horizontally. Gravity needs to work.
Okay.
They also stressed having a proper P-trap near the indoor coil. This holds water to block air and, potentially, sewer gases from being pulled back into your system. The trap needs to be primed with water initially and adequately supported so it doesn't sag.
And where the water drains outside.
Also important, code usually dictates how far it needs to be from your foundation. It shouldn't create a puddle that causes erosion or a slipping hazard. Hartzell's checklist even mentions they test the drain by pouring water into the main pan to ensure it flows freely.
That's thorough.
It really is. It shows they're focused on preventing future water problems, which can be costly.
And you mentioned condensate switches earlier. What are those?
Yes. These are safety devices, usually small float switches installed in the drain pan or on the drain line. If the primary drain clogs and water starts backing up, the switch detects the rising water level and automatically shuts off the HVAC system.
Like an emergency stop to prevent overflow.
Exactly. It prevents the pan from overflowing and causing water damage inside your home. Hartzell's checklist confirms they install these correctly and, crucially, test them to make sure they actually cut power when triggered.
Okay, wow. So the new system is physically in place, all connected up, drains look good. What's the next big step before you actually get to feel the cool air?
That would be the startup and commissioning process. This is where they actually turn the new system on for the first time.
The moment of truth.
Kind of, yeah. Hartzell's checklist says they run the system for over 10 minutes and verify that condensate water is draining consistently. This initial run lets them check basic operation and spot any immediate issues.
And the thermostat.
Big part of commissioning. They'll test the thermostat to make sure it's communicating properly with the new furnace and AC. This includes setting it up according to your preferences, programming a schedule if it's programmable, connecting it to Wi-Fi for an app if it's a smart thermostat.
Setting stages, maybe dehumidification.
Exactly. Configuring how it controls heating and cooling stages, any humidity control features your system might have. And just as importantly, Hartzell's techs should take the time to show you how to use the new thermostat.
That's helpful.
Very. They should also explain when and how to change the air filter. And critically, make sure you can actually access the filter easily. And finally, based on their initial readings, they should set your expectations for how the system should perform.
Okay, system's running, thermostat's programmed. What happens in that final post-installation phase?
Well, cleanup is definitely key. A professional job includes cleaning up the work area thoroughly. Hartzell's checklist specifically mentions properly sealing any penetrations made during the install.
What kind of penetrations?
Holes in drywall where wires or pipes went through, openings around the refrigerant lines where they enter the house, sealing the connections between the new equipment and your existing ductwork, the plenums. Making sure everything is airtight is important for efficiency and preventing drafts or pests.
Good point. Then what?
Then, a Hartzell's technician should ideally do a final walkthrough with you. Show you the installed equipment, visually confirm everything looks neat and tidy, go over the thermostat operation again, review safety features, and explain the warranty information, both for the equipment itself and for their installation labor.
And labeling things.
Yes. Their checklist mentions labeling the HVAC circuit breakers in your electrical panel so you know which ones control what. Also, labeling key components on the system itself can be helpful. And they should leave you with all the essential paperwork owner's manuals, warranty documents, any permits.
Sounds like they're pretty buttoned up on the documentation side.
It seems so. Their checklist also notes taking required photos of the installation, maybe for their records or for virtual inspections if the municipality allows that. And they enter the system details into their service software, probably house call TRO based on the note, likely for warranty and service tracking.
Interesting. And is that it, or is there more?
There's actually a bit more mentioned on their checklist that sounds like great practice, a follow-up inspection.
Oh, after the initial install day.
Yeah, scheduled maybe a few days later. They come back to recheck the system's location, double-check thermostat settings, ensure airflow feels balanced throughout the house, and basically answer any questions you might have thought of after living with it for a day or two.
That's a nice touch.
It is. And during this follow-up, or possibly right after the main install, they mentioned retesting for air leaks with the system running, checking duct connections again, sealing all seams and penetrations, including where lines go through the wall. They even mentioned coating or wrapping the outdoor line, set insulation for UV and weather protection.
Wow. Any final technical checks?
Yes, two important ones mentioned. Performing a nitrogen pressure test to double-check for leaks after everything is connected, and then pulling that deep vacuum again below 300 microns and ensuring it doesn't rise significantly when isolated. This is a final verification that the refrigerant circuit is absolutely tight. They also confirm that data stickers for any auxiliary electric heat strips are applied and marked correctly.
That level of detail, especially the follow-up and the final checks, really underlines why going with a professional installer is so important, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And Hertzel's own materials seem to emphasize this. You get the precision and expertise of trained techs, you ensure safety, which is huge with electrical and refrigerant handling, and you meet all the local building codes.
Plus, a proper install is better for the equipment long term, right?
Definitely. It helps the system last longer, run more efficiently, which ultimately means lower energy bills for you.
Now, even though Hartzell seems to cover a lot with their process, are there still some general questions a homeowner might want to keep in mind or ask, maybe based on advice from other HVAC sources?
It's always good to be an informed customer, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, even with a detailed process like Hartzell's seems to have, you might want to ask how they determine the right size unit for your specific home. Do they do a proper manual J-load calculation?
That considers square footage, insulation, windows.
Exactly. All those factors. It's more accurate than just guessing based on square footage alone. You could also ask them to explain the efficiency ratings, the SEER2 for cooling, HSPF2 for heating, and what that means for your potential energy savings over time.
Any other key questions?
Maybe inquire about any energy-saving upgrades they recommend, like smart thermostats if you don't have one, or maybe sealing existing ductwork if needed. Definitely get clarity on the warranty, what's covered on the equipment, what's covered by their labor warranty, and are there any maintenance requirements to keep that warranty valid?
Oh, good one. Like needing annual checkups.
Potentially, yeah. And one last thing, just confirm that Hartzell's handles pulling any necessary permits for the job. That's usually standard for reputable contractors, but always good to verify.
Okay. It's also useful sometimes to know what could go wrong, just to be aware. Based on what people talk about online, like on Reddit forums or homeowner groups, what are some common installation mistakes that people should maybe keep an eye out for?
Yeah, you do see recurring themes in those discussions. Things like the outdoor unit not being perfectly level, which can affect its operation and lifespan. Loose electrical connections, obviously dangerous. Condensate drains not pitched correctly, leading to backups later. Unsealed ductwork connections, especially on the return air side, which pulls unconditioned air from attics or crawl spaces, wasting energy.
And technical stuff.
Improper vacuuming of the system before charging it, leaving air or moisture inside. And sometimes, technicians might skip the full commissioning tests, not properly checking refrigerant pressures, temperatures across the coil, voltage, amperage draw, just doing a quick check instead of a thorough one.
It's reassuring, though, that Hartzell's checklist seems to specifically address a lot of those potential pitfalls, the leveling, the drain pitch, the vacuuming, the testing.
It does. It suggests they have procedures in place specifically designed to avoid those common mistakes.
And quickly, before we wrap up those new energy efficiency standards we mentioned earlier, what's the key takeaway for homeowners?
Right, so basically, any new central AC or heat pump manufactured after January 1st, 2023 has to meet stricter efficiency standards.
Yeah.
You'll see ratings like CR2, ERR2, and HSPF2. They use slightly different testing methods that are supposed to be more realistic.
And new refrigerant.
Yes, many new systems are transitioning to a refrigerant called R454B, which has a lower global warning potential than the older R410A. So if you're getting a new system from Hartzell's now, it should meet these current standards and likely use this newer refrigerant. It's worth confirming, but any reputable installer will be using compliant equipment.
Okay, so pulling this all together, it really sounds like a hard sells HVAC installation, judging by their own detailed checklist and best practices, is a very comprehensive process.
Absolutely. Multi-stage, lots of checks and balances. It points towards a real focus on doing things thoroughly, safely, and according to code from that first look all the way to the follow-up visit.
And just having this understanding, knowing these steps, can really empower you as the homeowner, right? Make the whole thing feel less daunting.
Exactly. When you have a general idea of what should be happening, you know what good looks like, you know what questions to ask, and you can communicate more effectively with the installation team.
So, final advice if you are getting a new system from Heart Cells, maybe don't hesitate to ask them about any of these steps. Ask about their specific procedures, their quality checks.
Couldn't agree more. Open communication is always key for a smooth project like this.
Okay, so thinking about all the detail involved in just one home system installation kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other complex home maintenance tasks, maybe things we take for granted, might actually benefit from us taking a similar deep dive, really understanding all the steps involved. Definitely food for thought about what goes into keeping our homes running smoothly.